To make a long story that you'll hear in a moment short, hooked on comics worked for me. And that's little 4-year-old Josh. And my mom, who's now a school librarian, made a point to read to me every night before putting me to bed. She valued literacy and education very, very highly. And one night, she let me pick the reading material. And like any red-blooded American male my age, I chose a comic, Transformers #4, to be precise. And everything was going great. No, actually, everything was going awesome. Right up until the laryngitis Mom had contracted earlier in the week caught up with her, and she lost her voice barely halfway through the issue. Now, this was completely unacceptable. Optimus Prime was in a lot of danger, and I had to make sure he was going to be okay. So I used the comic to teach myself how to read the comic. I was able to follow the narrative through the images, and I was able to reverse engineer all the words I didn't know by using that visual context. Basically, I taught myself to read comics by using comics. And just like that, I was literate. The whole process took about a week once I had the proper tools and the right motivation. And it inspired in me a love of reading and a love of learning. So much so that by the time I actually got to school, I was already reading several years above my grade level. In fact, by the time I got to middle school, I took the SAT test and I scored high enough to get admission to my local community college. I went to Northwestern on a National Merit Scholarship. I went on to become a magazine editor, a freelancer for the Chicago Sun-Times, again, an award-winning graphic novelist, an internationally syndicated cartoonist, and now I run an educational nonprofit because, again, my whole life has shown that hooked on comics works. So this idea that comics belong in the classroom is a fairly revolutionary one. It's not real reading. That's the thing I always hear a lot. And even if I can get my foot in the door, it's always this idea that, well, maybe it'll get them to read and then they'll read real books, which I have to bite my tongue on that. This idea that we want to bring in comics and change the curriculum because, to be perfectly honest, and again, this is something that's already been hit on several times today, what we're doing now just doesn't work. We've been doing a lot of the same for a very, very long time. As you can see up there, in real dollars, we have more than doubled education spending from 1970 to today. But all of our metrics of student outcomes have remained flat, or in some cases, have even gotten worse. Internationally, we rank 4th in spending. Yay us. But 12th in outcomes. Ooh. That's a terrible, terrible thing. Something is very wrong. Something is very broken. And we need to think radically and radically outside the box to fix it. And again, coming back to that idea that we want to use comics maybe as a way to promote real reading among struggling readers, I turn that around and I ask educators, what's so great about reading anyway? When I ask this of teachers, they're dumbstruck. They've seriously never thought about that question. It's an article of faith. Of course reading is a good thing. Of course literacy has value. And again, I agree, but why is that? When I ask that question, I get a lot of qualitative answers. Eventually, they always come around to a quantitative reason, the thing that I'm looking for. They say, you have to be involved with a book to get anything out of it. You happen to a book. When you're watching a movie, when you're listening to a record and a symphony, the orchestra, whatever this is, these are all things that happen to you. You're the audience. You're passive. When you're reading, you happen to a book. It has no reality. It's just words on a page until you breathe life into it, till you participate in that process with the author and bring that book to life. And comics can do the same thing. In fact, it's a more involved, a more powerful process. Before we continue, I want to do a quick definition of terms. What is a comic? Comics are juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence. That key element there is sequence, where you put images side by side and they gain added relevance by that juxtaposition. So here's something that I like to call the simplest comic in the world. Now there's Dad, and that's Junior. Go long, yells Dad. Dad throws a long bomb. Junior runs down the field, makes the diving catch. Touchdown, hooray. Very simple story. We're all used to this format, the comic strip. But what's happening here is really fascinating. Because take a look at that first panel again. Dad's got his arm back, right? And in the second panel, Dad's thrown the ball and Junior's running after it. But did you actually see the ball leave Junior's hand? No. It happened in that space where nothing is between the panels. And we call that the gutter. The gutter is where the magic of comics occurs. It's where you live. It's where you participate in this process, where you're filling in huge gaps in this narrative that I, as a cartoonist, deliberately leave for you. I'm not animating this. I'm not showing you what happens. I'm giving you just enough so that you can figure out the story for yourself. You're a partner with me, with any cartoonist, in the creation and the understanding of a comic. This idea that the ultimate goal of any literary work is that there's hidden depths, that you read between the lines and you find out what's really happening in the story. With even the simplest of comics, if you don't read between the lines, the comic doesn't get read at all. That's that power of comics. That's bringing reading with pictures, where you integrate the power, that engaged, involved process of reading with images as well as text. Now, of course, bringing any kind of new curriculum into the classroom requires some pretty heavy evaluation. What I like to call the 3 E's. Engagement. Is the material interesting? Is it presented in an interesting and exciting manner? Comics have more immediacy than prose, and cartoon images have more visceral appeal than realistic ones. Efficiency. How quickly can we get all this stuff that's out here into here? And with comics, you combine words and pictures, and you can convey more data in less time. And efficacy. Just how good is this curriculum? How well can you turn knowledge into understanding? And can you make sure that they retain it after the test is over? And our brains are optimized for reading comics. So the issue of immediacy. It takes less time and effort to get into a comic than traditional materials. With a comic, the moment that you open it up, you're in that story, you're in that world, you're engaged with that material. You can tell in a second. And children of all ages are very, very savvy consumers. We don't think about that in the classroom, but it's true. And they know what they like very quickly. And if you give them something and they say, yeah, that's cool, they'll buy into it. And you've got them. The comics do this by using pictures and text to quickly set a scene and establish character dynamics. And this is a page from my book, Mail Order Ninja. And in it, very quickly, you get the setting. It's a city at night in the rain. It's intense, actiony, drama. And we know who the characters are very quickly. There's the black ninja and the white ninja. The black ninja's the good guy, the white ninja's the bad guy. They don't like each other. Bam. You've got them. And this immediacy makes comics much less intimidating than prose to troubled readers. Because what we've seen time and time again is if a student is reading and the book beats them, they will walk away from it. With a comic, that almost never happens because of this scaffolding. They're so excited by what they're doing that they don't want to walk away. They can't. And we see this also with intermediate and advanced readers too, where the time commitment involved, that entices them to read and material they wouldn't seek out as well. It's, as opposed to a novel that may take them 4 or 5 hours to work through, this is a 30-minute snack. I'll give it a shot. And if I like it, well, then I'll reread it. And again, and again, and again. You're probably all familiar with this book, Mouse by Art Spiegelman, won a special Pulitzer Prize in 1989, the only comic to ever do so. It's the story of Spiegelman's father's experiences in the Holocaust. And the ideas he uses to tell that story are the same reason that kids like Mickey Mouse. He anthropomorphizes an entire race, in this case Jews, as mice and Nazis as cats. And the same way that you look at Mickey and you see yourself, you look at this and you see you. You can't get distance from the story. It's power. It's a powerful story, but its true power lies in that presentation where you can't get away. That's you up there. That's your family. And not just behind the fence, on the other side of it when you see your face in the cats, too. That's power. That's the engaging power of cartooning. But now to bring things up a little bit, efficiency, the second E. So every day there's more to know. And our school days, they're not getting any longer. Our school years aren't getting any longer. We need to find ways to cram more information into those kids' brains in shorter periods of time. And information technology has made this possible in all other fields of endeavor. But for some reason, we say, no, it can't work in education. And I say, of course, that's not true. So what if we could turn the short attention spans of the young people these days into a feature rather than a bug? What if we could accelerate our teaching methods to keep up with their learning curve? And what if comics could help us do that? But efficiency is nothing without efficacy. And our brains are wired to read with pictures as well as words. Visual narratives can also provide this supporting scaffolding for traditional textual narratives. And the comics format aids in both retention and comprehension. Think back to when you were in elementary school. Wasn't school kind of fun when you were a kid? All your friends were there. There were bright pictures on the walls. You did activities. That was fun times. And then somewhere around the 5th grade, usually, things get serious and the walls get bare and you have to sit with books that just have reams of words on them. Coincidentally enough, it's in the 5th grade when we start dropping off in those international rankings. Until that point, we're actually doing pretty great. We're actually 4th, typically, at the 4th grade, right in line with our expenditures. It's after that. It's when we get serious about learning that our students stop learning. There's something called the dual coding theory of cognition. And when you pair an image with complementary text or vice versa, you're more likely to retain the knowledge of both. You put words and pictures together, and you get better memory retention of the content. That's comics. And finally, I say look outside the world of formal education, and you'll find comics being used to teach and to educate all over. I think we've all seen this. When the stakes are really high, what do? They give you comics. When if you don't pay attention, you're going to die. They give you comics. The military, for close to 50 years, employed a man named Will Eisner, who's known in comic circles as basically the graphic novelist, the cartoonist, to create their instructional and training manuals. And when you're writing a safety manual for a missile launcher, that's some important stuff. So when the stakes, again, are that high, where does the world turn? They turn to comics. And we don't think of it that way, but that's what it is. That is a comic. Those instructional manuals are comics. So what we do at Reading with Pictures is try to work with educators, with researchers, with publishers to produce material that can revolutionize education, that can do the things that we know comics can do. Because really, in the end, comics are just words and pictures. And you can do anything, and you can teach anything with words and pictures. Thank you very much.